And back at it, another episode of Under Pressure. I'm your host, Carmine Gellinella, and we have beer in the studio, so you know it's going to be an awesome episode. So excited to be joined by Dave BuShea, co-founder and president of Sailfish Brewing Company. Thank you so much for being part of Under Pressure.
Thanks for having me on today, Carmine.
So, Dave, I always start the show off by opening up to my guests to let everybody know a little bit about themselves. So who is Dave BuShea, and how did Sailfish Brewing Company get started?
Yeah, so I mean, going back 13, 14 years ago, just had this crazy idea that we could have better beer in Florida. And at that time, there wasn't a lot of breweries around. So, we'd been tinkering around our garage, like most people do, brewing beer in a garage. And a couple buddies that I started it with, one was really good friends with Philip Bush, who owns our local wholesaler. He brought over to our house one of the guys from one of the other suppliers, Victory Brewing. And Cameron Rollo is his name, actually. Shout out to Cameron. He's actually the reason Sailfish started. So he tasted our beer. He said, "Wow, you part of it." He's like, "This tastes pretty good." It's like, "All right, cool." So the next day, I did a do-it-yourself, start your company thing, and we started looking for space. And we searched from Vero Beach to Stewart, and ended up in Fort Pierce because of a lot of reasons. Mainly the fact that found a great location. And it just made sense kind of right in the middle for us at the time. I was still in Jupiter, and my other two buddies were up in Vero Beach, and right in the middle. So yeah, it kicked it off from there, and just haven't really looked back, and just started doing it, moonlighting with our day jobs for the first couple of years, and eventually one of us took the leap and started doing it full time, which was myself, and haven't looked back. 9 years ago. So,
well, first of all, congratulations.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Thanks. An incredible product. So when Cameron gave you that pretty good, was that as gratifying as I think it would be for a couple of people just making beer out of their garage?
Well, we now have this. So yes, that was pretty gratifying enough to get us excited enough to go start something. So
I feel like an infant when it comes to any knowledge, when it comes to beer, with the exception of how I drink it. So take me through that process of starting it from your garage. Like, how do you brew beer in a garage?
Yeah. So you're dealing in 5-gallon buckets at the time. From a quantity standpoint, then when we found our location, we bought a, barrel and a half Blickman system, which is, a barrel is 31 gallons. So 31 and a half gallons of beer at a time we could brew, and on, electric coils in there to heat the boil, and just big pots pretty much. So they were just making big soup, things of soup in the back there on this wooden table I built the building could have blown away. The table would have still been there. But, started that way, immediately couldn't make enough beer to keep up with the demand in the small tap room brew pub we opened up. And then about a year later, we bought a 3-barrel stout system with a couple 6-barrel fermenters, and then started brewing a little more beer, pretty much twice as much at that point. Could kind of keep up with the tap room a little bit. Then I got this crazy idea to start giving some beer to distribution, and had a few of our kegs at some local restaurants. And then about 3 years in, we said, well, are we going to do this or not? So we went big and partnered up and acquired what was the old J.C. Penney's in downtown Fort Pierce, about a 25,000 square foot building.
Shout out to J.C. Penney.
Yeah, shout out to J.C. Penney's. Yeah, circa 1962, I guess. And moved into there. Did an SBA loan. Bought a 20-barrel DME system, and we're able to start cranking out some real volume of beer at that point. And then we moved. We shut down that location, moved the retail brew pub component up to the front of the building that we acquired, and had the tasting room up there, eventually turned into a restaurant, and just kept going. I mean, that's like we're trying.
It was literally like you just put the foot to the floor at the accelerator, and you just kept on going,
dodging a gazillion amount of obstacles along the way. But yeah, and just learning. I mean, that's the biggest thing, is learning. At that time, the beer industry 13 years ago to what it is now is completely different. From
in a good or bad way.
Neither. I think just different. I think it's going through its cycles like anything does. That starts off somewhat small. I mean, we're the 42nd brewery to open up in the state at that time in 2013. And now there's like 300 something breweries in the state, so it's blown up. But I think that's been a lot of positive with it. We're the first brewery in the Treasure Coast, so we've kind of brought craft beer to the Treasure Coast. So pretty much Vero to Martin County, and helped a lot of breweries get started. And I think there's like 13 or 14 in the Treasure Coast now, and just educating and exposing people to what other options are out there. And we had a beer we started making, we still make, called White Marlin, and it's a Belgian wit. And I always say it's everything Blue Moon wishes it was. But that was the gate.
I like that.
It was the gateway drug to craft beer in the Treasure Coast. It was that entry level 5% sessionable. We are very fortunate to have Natalie's orange juice across the street from the brewery. So we actually use their oranges and orange juice in that.
That's one of my favorite
beer.
orange juices. I mean, it is quality. It is probably the best orange juice, actually.
Yeah, I don't think it's made in Florida anymore, but because they had acquired last year, but I think it's in California now. But it's still great juice.
My statement still remains the same, regardless of where it's from. But
yeah, I mean, great partners have and still are. And that was like the entry level. And then people started, ambers and IPAs and stouts and hazy IPAs and lagers. And before you know it, like we've educated a whole area of Florida on craft beer and helped other breweries get started as well too.
I like that you mentioned. I like that you mentioned that you also helped other breweries get started, because some companies wouldn't do that. They'd be like, "No, why are we going to help you out? You can end up being our competition.
No.
Why do we do that?" And I'm sure you just remember your roots. A couple guys in the garage starting it off. And
I remember shortly after we started, it kind of encouraged some other breweries to get going too. And I remember being interviewed by a reporter asking about, are you worried about competition? I said, well, it's not competition. To me, it's the more the merrier. You're trying to create a destination for people to come check out a bunch of breweries. And we're all tight knit for the most part, and and really kind of look out for each other. And like what helped us get started was literally Matt and Fran, who started Sequester Brewing Company. I remember going down there, sitting with Matt and Fran, and helping us get off the ground for what we're trying to do here with Sailfish. And Matt Webster's got a great story with that, because I asked him how he came up with the logo of TBC. It's like that. It's a not a Barracuda, but a Wahoo or something like that in the photo. And he's like, "Oh yeah, we didn't want to call it like something like Sailfish." I'm like, oh, "Okay, well that's what we're calling our brewery." So,
he said that before you even mentioned that. That is so good.
So we stuck with the name.
Sign.
It's worked.
Stick with that name,
and it's clean, and just like our beer is clean and consistent. So yeah.
Why the Sailfish now? I can't not ask you that question.
We at the time. At the time was Nick Bischoff, myself, Mike Sturgis, and Danny Horton, and kicking around different ideas and names. And really that was just kind of Nick and I at the time, because we kind of got it off the ground. Just grew up in Florida fishing, and, kind of started looking at like we had a bunch of different names. We were called Inlet Brewing and all those other different things, something coastal fishing related. And we started looking at the flags and like, that you would fly when you go sailfish fishing or something like that. And looked at those. And that's pretty cool. Like, could we, use that? And my old marketing assistant, I called her up, Rachel, and I said, "Hey, could you kind of make this flag for us and make it our own with our own trademark?" And she did, and I paid her $50, and then we have the logo and call it Sailfish, and just didn't look back.
I mean, aesthetically, it looks great. It's a good looking fish.
Yeah.
So I mean, it definitely pops. And I know you said you kind of avoided every obstacle, but the show is under pressure. Were there times that
we didn't avoid every obstacle? We ran through a lot of obstacles.
You ran through those obstacles. Can you tell me a couple of them, especially starting out? Some of the barriers you had to.
Just so many. I mean, even like we probably went to like 25 different banks to get our SBA loan initially. Was a big challenge. Explained to people what we were doing. I remember at the time, no one knew what a brew pub was, a brewery was up in the Treasure Coast area. So I remember at the time, the reason we picked the location we picked was they were rezoning that area and creating a new district in downtown Fort Pierce. So they were writing the zoning laws at the time. So at the time, we worked with Leslie Olson, who was the planning director there. And I remember taking all them down to the Sequester Brewing Company to show them what a brew pub was. Because they didn't know, they thought we have a biker bar and things. Like, no, guys, like this is not what you're doing here. So that it's just all the things you do. You don't think about at the time. You just keep moving. It's like, hey, what is the next step? What is the next step? And when we got our larger system and started like thinking about distribution and all these different things, that was probably the biggest learning curve of understanding how to be effective, knowing who we are, doing what makes sense for us, not what everybody else wants us to do. I mean, I always tell people, if I brewed every beer someone told me to make at a beer fest, we wouldn't be where we're at. And you really need to kind of stick to what makes sense. And over the years, we become very data driven and let data kind of help us make our decisions, not making it off of your gut. Or it's like, it's like the bartender at a restaurant that orders the beer he likes to drink versus what the customers like to drink.
It's like if you're the only one drinking that, guess what? We're not going to be making any money.
Exactly. So. Just those types of things, just keep moving forward through it all and adapting to the industry. And that's probably been the biggest challenge, because at the time in like 2014, 2015, 2016, it was like a grab for all these wholesalers to sign all these craft breweries, because that was the new thing, and Oscar Blues and Magic Hat helped kind of launch that in South Florida. back in like 2017. And it was just all of us. It was kind of a really interesting time because we were all really close at that time, and we were all kind of trying to do the same thing about different size, and then we all kind of started to separate a little bit. And the wholesalers is such a big part of what we're doing in that partnership, and that's the most important thing. They're our customer, and having a good relationship with them is extremely critical. And working well with them and coming to them with a solution, not looking to them to just sell our beer, which a lot of suppliers sometimes do. But you're just adapting and staying ahead of it and looking at like trends. And I shouldn't say I should not looking at trends, but looking at what's working and what's not, and doing what's right for us and not sacrificing who we are. And that's right now the most important thing is understanding who you are and just embracing that, and don't try and be something you're not. Like just be who you are, know who you are, and do things that make sense for yourself and your company. That's the most important thing.
Be true to yourself. And I'm sure it could have been very easy for every time you're getting recommendations on people at all these festivals who are beer drinkers. It's not like they're there just by accident. It's like they went out of their way to go there. Like you said, you wouldn't be where you are. But has there been a time where the data and also a lot of recommendations have matched up, where you're like, oh, maybe there is something here?
Yeah, I mean, I was a big so that hazy IPA right there is one of them. I was not a fan of doing that style of beer for a long time. I thought it was kind of like a easy to make IPA, and
why is that? Like I said, you can treat me like a layman. Like I have no clue.
So
it's almost like a cop out before you
judge a brewery. You judge a brewery on how well their Pilsner or lager tastes. If that's done well, they're doing everything else good. AZ's kind of just basically put as much dry hopping in there that it buries any kind of imperfection that could happen in the beer potentially.
Oh, it's almost like a cheat code.
Kind of. I mean, that's a lot of what can bury any mistakes is a lot of hops. So that's not the only thing, but it's just, to me, it was a fad, and I didn't really I've never been a big fad chaser, and finally the data told us that's what we need to do. I mean, we've been doing hazies in the tap room, but not in distribution. And then it just worked out. Like we're getting ready to launch that. And you mentioned you had Andy Dehart from Lager Marine Life Center on a couple weeks ago. And, I said, we have to do this with intention. We can't just launch something to launch it. Like, why are we doing this? And my girlfriend, Emily, at the time was working with us part-time. And she's like, hey, can we adopt a turtle? I'm like, yeah, of course. Go adopt a turtle. Whatever you want to do. And that led into, well,
it's like, how much does that cost me?
Lager Marine Life Center. My sister used to work there when she was in high school. I know the place when it was small to what it is now. And coincidentally, Kenny St. Cyr, who worked for us, had run into Andy at a Captain's for Clean Water event. And it's weird. It all ties together. We're close with Captain's Clean Water.
Yeah.
And Andy was at the event. He exchanged hats with Kenny because Kenny wanted the hat he had, and he wanted the hat Kenny had. That led into an introduction. I said, Kenny, hey, you met that guy who runs Loggerhead. Can you create a meeting? So we did. We met with them, and Andy is an awesome dude, and he got it, and it made sense to plow forward with that. So we launched that beer in collaboration with them specifically, Loggerhead Hazy IPA. QR code on the can to scan it to donate directly towards them, learn about what we're doing with them, and supporting them. I mean, I think we donated over 150 cases for their Turtle Fest last 2 months ago to raise a bunch of money for their events, and they're just great partners. And I've done a lot of partnerships with different charitable organizations, causes. And this is the first one where it's like, man, this is like too easy. You guys make it make sense because their whole team cares what we're doing. They love beer. They love what we're doing. And it's great to work with. And they have, I mean, obviously what they're doing is a great cause to begin with, but I mean, they're just good people to work with. And
I've been very fortunate. Everybody who I've had on this show, you could just see the passion they have for whatever industry they're in. And it is kind of awesome that you're here now after talking to Andy. And then now those worlds have collided, at least, from my perspective.
Yeah.
And just seeing that from inception to now is just really, really cool. So, Dave, I need to ask the $1 million question now. You're probably going to be like, oh, it's like kids. You can't say which one you love the most. What is your favorite beer that you brew and why?
It's funny you say that. We had our head brewer, Dave, who's been with me for 10 years now, on our podcast last year. And he brought up that question. Or I think Brian Thomas, our sales director, asked him that question too. And he had a really witty response. I'm not going to repeat what he said or copy him, but it really just depends what day of the week it is, honestly. My go-to now in my age is our light lager because I just can't drink a lot of heavy beers. And unfortunately, when I sit down,
happens to the best
I
of
can't
us.
just drink one. I have to drink 3 to 5.
Okay.
So
we should start now. We have about 35, 40 minutes left in this podcast.
so that's
we should
I was
crack
starting
open
with
at
the
least one of them.
light tackle or light lager, and then but yeah, I mean, you can't beat just a fresh Sunrise City IPA, man. It's just so flavorful and crisp and clean, and just goes down really easy. And that's kind of the other challenge too, is it goes down really easy.
So I have to tell this story because this guy, he just went back up north. He was a snowbird because I also work at Salute Market, right?
Yeah, they're great friends of ours.
As a server, when I tell you this guy would come in no less than 9 Sailfish beers a night. The first time I served him, I told my producer Travis, I was like, I should have asked him earlier in that evening. I was like, hey, I'll keep giving you these beers, but how are you getting home?
Yeah, he's 9 of those will.
He's like, you know, the lady who's just drinking strawberry lemonade. Yeah, that's who's bringing me home. I was like, all right, well, I'll keep him coming because I was like, I'm never gonna knock somebody's hustle, but at the same time, I want him to come back.
Yeah, no, for sure. And if he's got a safe ride, then I'll more power to him. Yeah.
I mean, it's just let's crack open one of these.
Yeah,
Dave.
I'll grab me a light tackle.
2 light tackles. Why not? Travis, you want in on this, sir? Cheers. Go ahead, Travis. Come in and get it. You can be in the camera for once, Travis. It's fine. They'll finally show you. And while we're still talking, Dave, because the Lagerhead thing is so brilliant still, because if someone's making a decision and they don't really know you yet or your product, they'll see Lagerhead and be like, well, let's support the turtles. Because I even told Andy, I was like, it is the cheat code animal. I've never seen more people behind a certain animal than I do turtles. Oh, yeah. I mean, we got rid of plastic straws because of turtles for a useless paper straw. Like, I want to talk about something that is absolutely rendered useless once you use it. One more time. Cheers, 95. Yeah, and it's just such a
well, it's nice to see the results too. And I remember I was talking to him and some of his guys there last year, and they were saying how, you know, I think the maturation of a turtle to start nesting is like 30 to 40 years. And Lagerhead started around that time. I can't remember the lady's name that started initially, but since they started, they're now starting to see like the results of that. And like the amount of nesting has increased dramatically along the coast because there's so many of age turtles now that are actually nesting. So it's nice to see like the effort.
And it's one of the biggest turtle nesting areas in the entire world. It's not just something like it's just to Florida, and that's literally the entire world the turtles come. And it's kind of cool because it's like, just like these turtles come back to the same place they've nested before, you want your customers to go back to the same beer they've grown up and fallen in love with. So, I mean, it's just a $1 million situation. So now I need to ask you, how many times over the years have you come up with a certain beer and you were like, this is a surefire hit,
God, man.
And then for whatever reason it didn't work? And it goes back to your bartender analogy. It's like, just because I love it doesn't mean everybody else does, and we got to just push this on people.
Yeah, I have a few of them. I mean, the beer side, I get hung up on. I go to a beer fest and I get super inspired because I get back and I try and do at least a few beer fests a year just to maintain that pulse point with the consumer and hear feedback from them. Yeah, and I always come back really inspired from that, full of a ton of ideas, and then we sit down and we brainstorm it and whiteboard it and throw spaghetti against the wall and see what actually does make sense. But probably the 2 biggest things was when Seltzers kicked off, when COVID hit, I was like, we need to do a seltzer. So we started doing one in the tap room. I said, okay, we're going to can this, going to put it on the shelf. I developed a whole marketing plan behind it. By the time we got ready to launch that, look at the shelves. I was like, man, we're just going to get lost. So I just pulled the plug on the whole thing. I said, we're not doing this. This makes no sense. That was me chasing a trend.
Did it taste good though?
It was great.
I don't love seltzers personally. I feel like they taste very similar, no matter which brand you go with.
It's all fizzy water. Yeah. I mean, it's just, it's all relative to that. So, yes, I mean, it was good. We still have it in the tap room sometimes. It's nice and refreshing, was the thought process.
People love them. I'm not knocking people's love for seltzer. It's just it's not my cup of
it wasn't mine. And that was kind of a thing too. Like, it wasn't mine.
You did it because it was trendy.
Exactly. And then fast forward a couple of years, I decided to do a hard tea because it was trendy. And I don't drink hard tea. I don't pick up what do you call that? The twisted teas. Yeah, I don't drink that stuff. I mean,
you want to talk about fucked up hangovers? You have about 7 to 8 twisted teas. Dude, you're like a slug that got poured.
The
salt
amount of
on.
sugar in that stuff is insane. So my whole thing is, okay, well, I'm gonna make a hard tea that doesn't have any sugar in it and super healthy. And I'll never forget Brian, our sales director. He did like the Pepsi challenge with Twisted Tea and RT. And everybody's like, ugh, what is that? Oh, I like this better. And it was Twisted Tea at the time. And, you know, what it taught me was people just want sweet stuff.
Yeah.
You know, they don't care. I shouldn't say they don't care. More people, they want that sweet taste. They don't want, you know, something that doesn't taste. Our tea tasted like, you know, the old country time tea your mom would make.
Really?
Like, yeah, it was like that.
Oof.
We had like the tea powder and stuff. It was good over ice with a lime. You had to do a lot of things.
If you were
too.
already drunk and desperate, maybe it's like, let me get one of those Sailfish teas.
Yeah, it rears its head every once in a while. It's one of those things that, and we launched it, and our wholesaler did a fantastic job putting it everywhere, and it sat on the fucking shelf. And I ended up buying a lot back, and this is one of those things like that. After that, I was like, no more. We're a beer. We're gonna stick to what we're good at, and just dive heavy into that. And you know, everything happens for a reason. We tried it, we learned, and realized, you know, that's not us, and we're gonna stick to what we do.
Well, you know what? You can't know if something's gonna work unless you try it. So at least you're not afraid to try some things.
Yeah, I agreed, and I think there's a method of the madness with the amount of sampling and test markets people do before they launch something. There's a reason behind that, and we didn't do enough of that for any of the things we did, and yeah, so yeah.
And can we deep dive into the data, because I'm actually curious about that. I'm not the most data driven person, but I'm just interested, like, what can you tell me about the data you get? Is there certain trends in just beer drinking, or this is something like people go out and survey beer drinkers?
Yeah, it's really, and it's not a one size fits all. It's really what markets you're in. So like the way Florida's set up is a 3-tiered system. You have to be with a wholesaler in certain every region you're in to have them sell your beer for you through them. And every market's different, and every relationship's different with a wholesaler, and they all have different portfolios of suppliers. So you have to look at where you fit into that. So that's one thing. The other thing is, like, we do a lot of, like, you know, Nielsen data or scan data. What is selling? You know, what is the most popular beer? And you know, if you look at these reports, there's one thing craft beer owns. I'm not a huge fan of the word craft anymore at this point, but craft beer in general owns IPAs. If any other, you know, macro beers own anything, that, you know, it's the Pilsners, lagers, those types of things. We own IPAs. If you look at the data, IPAs sell literally 13-1 to everything else. I mean, the volume of revenue is tremendous from a scan data perspective, and everything else after that is like, it doesn't matter. Let's just do more IPAs. But we have a pretty good mix of what we do with, you know, a couple IPAs, the light lager, an amber, a Belgian wit. But there's no surprise that Sunrise City, you know, sells 10-1 to everything else.
Yeah,
that's our number one beer, and that's one of the big things we lean into, is that data, and not so much look at the national data that you read or hear, because that will kind of discourage you a little bit. Florida is different. Like you can't look at Florida as part of the rest of the country.
We are our own entity.
100%. Like, there should be a publication for the U.S. and then a publication just for Florida, and then different parts of Florida. Like, you know, we still be in Orlando, Melbourne, obviously Treasure Coast of Palm Beach, Broward, and the Keys, and it's all a little bit different, you know, as far as the people that are there, what they're drinking, where they're at, and their maturation of craft. Yeah, I mean, and you know, bottom line is, it's, you know, continue to build the brand off relationships, is what we
relationships are key in anything in life. I love how you said that it's different in each area of Florida, because someone asked me one time to describe Florida. I go, how much time do you have? I was like, Miami might as well be a different country in its own. Fort Lauderdale, a little bit lighter than Miami, but it's still like, what the hell is this?
But there's pockets in Broward County. There's Davie, there's Pompano Beach, there's like Deerfield, and those are different. Yeah, you know, you got the Davie, it's completely different.
And then, West Palm, then you keep going north and north and north, and it's like, whoa, it's like night and day. Sometimes you don't even think you're in Florida anymore.
We do these like heat maps with the Publixes we're in, and like the Publix in different areas and where they sell more of our beer at, and vice versa. And that's a telling sign of like the demographic of people in certain areas. Yeah. People
are so true to their Publix. You ever go to your you know, the not typical Publix you go to? It's jarring at first. You're like, wait, why is everything different? Just stick to the script.
This is not my Publix.
I mean, we live in a state where there'll be a Publix here and then another one across the street, and people will be like, nope, I want to go to that Publix. That's the Publix I go to.
I went to one of the new ones they opened up recently up in Brevard County, and it's got a whole different like round circle layout for the deli. Like, it's set up like a standalone, like, get your pub subs here.
Oh, really?
Like, that was jarring, because it's like, wow, I feel like I was in like a Harris Teeter or something like that. You know what that is? Like, it was strange, but they're all completely different, and all of them have different size coolers. So like, the bigger Publixes have a bigger beer cooler, so you have more beer in the planogram and then in the beer sets, and you have to, every one of them is different.
I've never got to ask this question. How does it work when it comes to placement of your beer? Like, do you
in the
bid
actual
for like shelf space, or it's kind of wherever they put you?
It's a little bit on our wholesaler. They kind of design the layouts, but we have to first get it approved by Publix first. So Publix has to give you the green light. Okay, cool, you're in the planogram, and then our wholesalers kind of work with Publix to design the layout of that and where our beer fits into that space, that landscape. That's our space for 12 months or, until they kick us out of there. But that's pretty much what we own. It's just landscape. It's all block and tackling. I mean, it's block and tackling for shelf space. And that's the reason you have, the size packaging we have with, there's a reason we started doing 12 packs of Sunrise City, because it takes up twice as much square footage, on the shelf. You can turn it sideways. There's a lot of things you can do with it differently. And it's all about designing that shelf. How do you take up more real estate? And, one of the bigger things that I think I've learned is you can't compare yourself to all these other brands out there, especially the macro brands, because you can't compete with someone that's not really worried about making money as much as they are just blocking everybody else out.
Yeah.
When you start to compete with that, it's a race to the bottom. Know who you are. Our price is our price. People will buy it. It's proven. And, we're very competitive on the shelf, but we're not going to be dropping our prices down to compete with one of the larger brands. Like, we're not going to compete with Corona. That's not us. So even though I say we're the Corona craft beer because we're somewhat of a lifestyle brand, I like to say sometimes, but tongue in cheek.
I like that. And then when it comes to designing the can to make it stand out, what goes behind that?
Yeah, so over the years, we've had different people design the cans for us. So Sunrise City is actually the nickname of Fort Pierce. So that's actually looking out the back of the brewery over the marina in Fort Pierce. So Sunrise City, that was kind of just a picture we took, and I actually got sued for it because it had artwork in it originally that was actually there, that the artist saw the can and said, "That's my artwork. You owe me $10,000." I said, "Okay, well, hold on there."
Yeah,
so we had to change that can design, was the concession there with that. And then,
did you send them some beer?
No, we were not very friendly with that
I
situation.
assume it wasn't the most biggest of pleasantries.
But then we've had other like marine artists. Dennis Friel designed a few of our cans with different billfish on it. Southern Eagle designed one of our cans, White Marlin. And we have a graphic artist we work with now, Adam Ross, who's fantastic. He designed our hazy IPA can and light tackle can. He's kind of he kind of like brought our non-congruentness to be consistent and let's line the flags up. Let's do something that makes sense here. And he kind of right-sized everything for us to have it make sense and be consistent. Putting the born and raised on the side of the can, and all the cans, like just things like that. So,
I mean, that's huge, the born and raised, because as we were talking a lot about geography today, it's just we're very loyal. When it comes to Floridians, we're loyal, and we like what we like, and we stay true to that. And have you just seen that feedback from the community where people are like, I don't want to say, to be cheesy, changed my life, but it's just like, you've completely changed the way I look at beer?
Our home, Fort Pierce in general, I mean, the people in Fort Pierce are extremely proud of Sailfish because they were a part of making us who we are. And they were there from the very beginning when our beer sucked to, what it is now. And, I've seen that with everybody. They resonate towards the fact that we're just like, that's why I don't like the word craft anymore. I prever independent local.
I was going to ask you that, so I'm glad.
Independent local is what I want to drive, because it's all, end of the day, it's all beer. We're just selling beer, guys. What's the difference? Ours is made 10 miles up the road. Yours is made 1,000 miles away. And that's really what I lean heavily into. But I mean, to your question, the local aspect. I mean, there's some really raving fans out there. They're just really amazing, and just love to talk to them about the beer and how it's influenced them in their education of craft and what they like. And we have some cult followings around certain beers we make, and it's just great to talk to those people. You have to make that impact on them. Like, that's their favorite beer. That's pretty cool. Yeah,
I was going to say that's got to be one of the most gratifying things about everything. Obviously, just being a successful business is a plus, but just that, just knowing you have changed people's lives. And have people offered a recipe for you? Have they been like, try this?
Yes.
Have you ever tried any of those recipes?
We have. We've done a few things. So when we moved into the building we are in now, for a while we had an old 3-barrel system, which was like our pilot system for a while. It was all of our test batches. We had a few people come up. Ray Torres came up. He works at my new joint, a square grouper down in Kujoki in the Keys, and he brewed a beer with us. We call it Fish Whistle. If you know what fish whistle is.
I do not.
So I don't. People stake claim to this, but I'm pretty sure it came from Fort Pierce. If you know Fort Pierce, fish whistle is if you're out fishing, you're not catching anything, you roll a joint. That's what brings the fish in. So when we designed that can, I had a couple of renditions of it. But if you look at the lure on the cast being thrown, it's a joint at the end of it. We had that can distribution for a while. It's our tap room
awesome.
now. So.
And then, I mean, just what square grouper actually means is even better.
Yeah,
Between that, it's all drug based in that case.
Exactly. So we had some good amount of people up just to brew with us of their recipes and just try things. And like, that's a great experience for someone just to do that. And like, they're never going to forget that. And it's all about the impact that you make on people and touch and make them feel something.
And what's the timeline on from start to finish on a certain beer? We'll go with for instance, we'll go Sunrise.
So most of our ales are between, let's say, 12 to 14 days.
Okay, that's quick. That's a lot
brew
quicker than I thought.
Being put into a finishing tank and packaged into a keg or a can. The lager takes about 5 weeks, just because of the process, the temperatures it's fermented at, the yeast we use for it. So that's the bigger differentiator for all the beers is obviously the yeast we use and everything. So there's a different yeast in each one of these 3 beers in front of us. But timeline, about 2 weeks.
And what increases the alcohol content to it? So what makes it from a 5% to a 7% to a 9%?
The yeast has a lot to do with it. The malt bill has a lot to do with that because that's where you're getting a lot of your proteins from, obviously, with the actual liquid and the wort you create and transfer and actually ferment. So that's a big part of it. If you use a lot of the darker beers, like the maltier base beer or the darker malts like the chocolate malts and amber malts out there, that you'll get those higher ABVs because you have more sugar in there to basically the yeast to eat, and that's what generates a lot of that sometimes.
And what's the highest ABV you guys have?
I think we've done like
7 will sneak up on you.
Oh yeah,
if you're not used to drinking.
A lot of our
7.
barrel aged stuff is like in the we've done some 14s I think in the past, but so that reminds me, one of the first beers we started making was a Belgian triple. So have you ever had Golden Monkey?
I literally had a 6-pack of Golden Monkey the other night.
Good for you. So we had a beer, not say copy that, but similar in style.
Yeah.
Belgian triple, and we called it Hammer Down. And throw the hammer down, And anyways, one of the first beers we started making, and we were taking it to the beer fest, and it drinks like extremely sessionable. Like you can, especially like women in general, like they just gravitate towards that beer at a beer fest, and they're throwing them back. And I was like, Hammer Down is going to put you face down because it's 11%.
Yeah,
and it's gonna. If you had Golden, I've had
Golden's 9.5.
Yeah, I've had my fair share of Golden Monkeys before, and I've definitely paid the price. So. But yeah, that was a fun beer to make, and we've talked about bringing that back at some point too. But again, it's like you can't do everything. You have to just kind of stick to what makes sense. Do that, and then we're so fortunate to have a great tap room. 2 tap rooms, one in Vera, one in Fort Pierce. But Fort Pierce, we can showcase all this stuff, and if you can't get it in the market, come to the tap room.
Yeah, absolutely. And talk more about the tap room.
Yeah, so like most brew pubs, we had a tasting room when we opened up. We moved into where we're at now. It was a tasting room, and then COVID hit. So. Pre-COVID, we had the idea to open up a kitchen. At the time, legally, we could not own and operate a kitchen in our establishment if we sold beer through distribution.
Really?
So I sublet it to Scott Van Duzer, who owns Big Apple Pizza in Fort Pierce. He operated that with his son. Actually, came and operated it for about a year and a half, and it was great. You have a food option there now because we couldn't really. The way we're set up, we're actually on the city street, so like we can't have a food truck out there like other breweries tend to have sometimes. So then COVID hit, we're all shut down. And then the only way to open back up again is you, as a restaurateur, you had to actually own and operate the food. You couldn't just open up because you had a food truck outside. So that led us to buying the equipment from Scott, becoming an actual restaurant at that point with DVPR and actually having that set up now instead of just a 2COP brew pub license. And then we did that and COVID took it over and just didn't look back and just have our own, we own and operate the pizza kitchen in Fort Pierce now. And it's awesome.
Once again, another obstacle you just...
COVID in general. It's just like you forget all that stuff, and I'm just have flashbacks sometimes, just things we did during that time. But you adapted on the fly. It's like you didn't have a lot of time either. It's like knock it out.
Yeah, obviously, this is a question that would be real tough to answer. I'm sure I know how you're going to answer, but how fortunate do you feel that we were in a state that was very for opening businesses back up, and let's not just shut everything down for the rest of eternity?
I honestly don't know what it would look like if we were in different states.
That's what I was going to ask.
I don't know. I just don't know. To me, it was great for beer because Florida was the Wild West for like 2 years because everybody came down here because that was the place you could go to and actually like relax and get out of the, isolation that you had where you currently lived at. And
I went on like 97 staycations during COVID.
Oh no, it was funny during COVID.
I traveled more than I did any other time.
So many people escaped to like where we're at in Fort Pierce, like for Fort Lauderdale and Miami, that were introduced to the brewery as a result of going up there for like 2 or 3 weeks, just because of doing a staycation, hanging out and go and check something, a new area out. So it's, the time was brutal and I wouldn't wish it upon anybody, but I'm very fortunate that we, had the government we had and the people in place that we had to work through that. And I mean, I can't remember the guy's name, but he was the head of DBPR at the time. And I was lighting him up left and right, trying to.
What is that? What does that stand for?
It's Department of, I should know, DBPR, Department of Business, Restaurants.
Got
and,
it. As long as I know what they do. Yeah, as long as I know what they do.
They basically monitor all like the businesses,
Understood.
Hotels, the stuff. The hotel restaurant license is pretty much what it is.
So you were going back and forth with him.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a lot of it. And just trying to understand, just because 1 minute we would open and then the next 2 days later, the agent would come by and say, no, you're closed now. I'm like, well, why? And the interpretation at the time was so frustrating. Of no one really had a guidebook on what to do. They just were covering their ass the entire time and doing what they thought was the best thing to do for them to keep them from getting in trouble. So, but I mean, I remember Taylor and Danielle, they were out front of the brewery selling beer to go. And there's a lot of people that are still with us, locals that, hung through us through COVID. And I remember we celebrated our 7 or 8 year anniversary during COVID and we were shut down. So we couldn't do an actual party. And I remember we did, do to-go orders, and I went and delivered beer to half a dozen people that day. That had orders.
What an impression you make.
Oh yeah.
Well, you do know that. I don't have to say that. Well, you know that.
I also have a huge appreciation for delivery drivers now because I got chased by about 3 dogs that day and everything else trying to deliver something.
I did Uber Eats for a while. Me and my girlfriend were just looking for some extra income. A lot of that was during COVID. We did that. Yeah. So yeah, it was just kind of one of those things. Same thing. I mean, I've been in hospitality. It's either been radio, podcasting, or hospitality. So I appreciate, the work that people put in when it comes to just making people's experiences
and it's all the impact you make on everybody. And that's just, there's no customer. It's I was in construction for 20 years before I started the brewery. And it's you treat every customer the same, no matter how big their project is. And that's kind of what we do. And found myself saying no a lot more now, which has been good because you want to make everybody happy. But you have to know what your limits are too. And we still run a pretty nimble, small team to do what we do. And it's, you have to be just realistic. It's got to
be a family at this point, and as long as you have the right people in place, there's no stopping you. So
no, we've had some very fortunate to have some people with us for a long time. Like I said, Dave, our head brewer's been with us for 10 years. Taylor's been with me for 8 years. She runs the restaurants. Gabe runs Fort Pierce. I mean, it's a good group of people. It's it's very fortunate to have the people we have that have made Sailfish what it is.
Well, awesome. So you've said no a lot more than you have. So what have you said yes to recently? What do you have coming up? Can we
So it's funny. Last Saturday we did a 2026 planning session. I'm really excited about the growth of all of our beer. Light Tackle specifically, we just got into Publix this year, and it's doing very well. And my goal is to make that the Cove beer. So the Cove is like our Peanut Island in Fort Pierce. That's where you go and hang out at the sandbar. And that's my goal is to make that this summer. It's going to be the Cove beer. But actually next week, I just ordered some extract and we're going to dose a couple of kegs with Light Tackle with apple and peach. It's kind of copy the Busch Light thing, and just see how, because people love that stuff. Yeah. And I'm excited to try it, honestly.
I like that.
It's just fun,
that is fun.
Getting back to making beer. And that's been our goal for the past couple of years. Let's make beer fun again. Because post-COVID was not fun anymore. It was just a grind, and you're like, why are we doing this? And making it fun again, fun advertising, fun marketing. I go back to the 80s and 90s marketing campaigns. Girls in bikinis, people having fun. Making fun of yourself. I mean, all those. That's where I want to lean.
Self-deprecation is one of my favorite forms of humor. So.
No, it's just and just. Mimicking or trying to replicate that or have that influence what we're doing moving forward. It's just making beer fun again. And guys, it's not we're in the best industry in the world. We sell beer and make beer. And I always tell my guys that there's nothing we can't fuck up, we can't fix. We make and sell beer. you know,
it's not heart surgery.
Exactly.
You know, no one's on the operating table that's going to die.
We're not, you know, we're not in a realm where anything we do is going to be something we can't repair. And
I love that Make Beer Fun again, because those commercials, we used to have the best beer commercials. That's like, you made it probably if you were in the advertising industry and you worked for a beer company, because you just put out, it didn't even matter. I used to look forward to the Super Bowl commercials just for that.
Yeah.
And of course we got all soft and weird and
oh God, man. And I think people are so exhausted with that now. They're like, they don't care. They just want to laugh and relax. And it's funny, like Brian, our sales director, him and I for like 3 hours just sat and like on YouTube and watched like SNL reels and all these like old commercials just to get an inspiration of like, how can we get back to like doing fun advertising again and just having a blast with stuff and making fun of ourselves. And we do a lot of stuff in our tap room too. And I'm a big, you know, 90s movies, like, you know, 80s and 90s. So like, you know, we'll mimic like Happy Gilmore, Step Brothers. We started selling sandwich subs in our tap room in Fort Pierce for a short period of time, and we mimicked like the Subway commercial from Happy Gilmore. You know, it was honestly amazing the way Gabe hit the sandwich, and then he kind of threw it into my hands. You know, and it just like plopped down. It was solid. If it gets on YouTube or something like that,
you should try to do some kind of spin off of when Billy Madison. In Billy Madison, when he puts the shit in the bag on someone's doorstep, just put a 6-pack of
there's
beer.
So much inspiration out there, and it's fun to copy if people like can resonate with, because that was their age group or whatever it was. They connect with it.
Nostalgia works, dude.
It really does, and we're leaning heavily into that. And it's just it's fun. Like the marketing component, like, is so much fun to have fun with what we're doing, not make it overly complicated. I mean, that's the reason we started the podcast last year. Was really, first off, was to kind of expose people to the underbelly of beer. Like the questions you're asking, say, let's try and answer those on the podcast. Like, let's describe. So we have like our wholesale partners on, different people on as guests, to like, hey guys, like, here's how difficult it is to get my beer from the brewery to that public shelf or that restaurant to drink it. It's not just as easy as like everybody thinks.
I'm just walking over to the street. There you go. Thanks, guys.
It's a lot too. There's a lot of people working very hard to make that happen and explain that to people. But then like the podcast, it just became a blast. You know, we would just throw back some light tackles or Sunrise Cities and just have a great time and host it.
This might be standard, even when you're not my guest anymore. I might just make this a standard.
I mean,
procedure
it's a nice, you know, just drink some beers and have a good. It loosens people up, you know. And I think one of our podcasts ran like 3 hours one time because we just like got a little too drunk and kept talking the entire time. It was a friggin' blast though. And Nate, our producer, just kept most of it. He's like, let's let it run.
He's like, this is gold, bro.
It's like you should probably make this to a 3-parter probably, but like it's just fun stuff comes out of it. And like at the time we had myself as the host, and then Brian Tonneson, our sales director, and Emily Hayhurst, who was working with sales for us on as like the co-host. And what I realized was how difficult it is to be a host with that many people on it. Cause like they didn't really act as hosts. They were like the other guests. So I had like sometimes like 4 guests on, and I'm trying to like follow what they're saying and also remember what I'm going to say and then try and generate a question from that. It was exhausting.
Oh, it's tough.
Yeah. And especially as you drink more beer, like whatever, guys, just let it roll. You know, like it was just, you know,
it's all about the content. I'm sure you had plenty, especially 3 hours worth of it.
Oh yeah.
There's some definitely gold nuggets in that. And
it flows too. So it was fun, but yeah, I mean, making beer fun, you know, really just doubling down on the local aspect. Saying that sometimes people get a little too big and they forget where they came from. Yeah. That's not us. I mean, that's not, I'm not trying to be cliche when I say that. It is 100% like we're doubling down on, this is our backyard. This is where we play. This is where we have a good time. You know, this is follow us, you know, in our daily routine of going fishing or on the boat or, you know, whatever it is in the brewery. It's just, it's endless for what you can do. It's just how much can you actually do?
Yeah. So, and what's the podcast name? I'm sorry.
It is Florida's Drinking Report.
Florida's Drinking Report.
You can find it on YouTube, Spotify, all the local outlets.
So after you listen and watch Under Pressure, make sure you check out that podcast as well. Yeah. I mean, Dave, this has been so much fun, man. I learned so much about beer, and I thought I knew a pretty decent amount about beer. I did not. So
I appreciate great questions.
This was absolutely
thanks for having me on today.
A blast. And you guys can check out Under Pressure anywhere you consume your podcast: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the iHeartRadio app, and of course, we drop these videos on YouTube as well. So, Dave, thank you so much.
Appreciate
Looking forward to the continued rise of Sailfish Brewing Company.
Yeah, thanks again for having me today.
You got it.